Good morning, everybody. No? Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be very short start a little workshop on postural issues, postural assessment workstations, and essentially how to be aware of the way you are standing or moving and what little things you can do to improve that. That's why we brought our in-house practitioner, Grant, who specializes in neurophysics and does all sorts of different things that he explains way better than me. So, without further ado.
I guess when it comes to workplace ergonomics, you're looking at a couple of things. The first part is how often do I do a task? And the second part of it is how much effort does it take? So if I'm on a work site and you're dealing with lots of load versus an office space, there's two different amounts of load going through a body. And what I look at is the position of the head, neck and shoulders is pretty much important to everything and any lift that you do. The weight of the head is 5 kilograms. Atlas bone, without giving an anatomy lesson, sits directly underneath your skull. So for every 3 centimeters your head moves slowly forward, the weight of the head, which is 5 kilograms, goes in shearing force through C7. Okay, so C7 here, if you have, which most people do, if they can't stand up against a wall with their head back, and they could probably fit the slide of the hand through there. I always use a knuckleometer. There's 3 centimeters between each of my knuckles. So if I can slide my whole hand, or you can slide your whole hand in the back of your head, that represents 15 kilograms of shear force going through C7. So what we have to look at is, if you're sitting and or standing, well, what are your muscle memory and muscle patterns that you do? Most people, when they sit down, do this. Okay, so a couple of things going on. A message gets sent to this group of muscles to contract. A message gets sent to this group of muscles here to relax or lengthen. I like dealing in law. My background's in biomechanics and evidence-based science. Gravity tends to be a law. Every time I jump off a building, I hit the ground. I don't every third time do I fly out. Likewise, in your body, there's laws. One of the law is reciprocal inhibition. So if I contract that muscle doing a bicep curl, then actually 2 things happen.
Low battery.
The first thing that happens is you get a message here. The second alternate message is here. So one contracts, one relaxes. If we use that theory on your head, neck and shoulders, what I look at, to counter the pattern of sitting like this, I do a chin tuck or a jaw jut. So what you can do just sitting there is try and push your chin as far out in front of you as you can and try and squash the back of your head. Doesn't feel that comfortable, does it? Then what I want to do is the reverse of that. If you pull the chin in and pull the head back, and actually pull your head back, you'll lengthen these muscles and shorten these ones. A really simple way you do that is to lay down on the floor and gently curl the head only up off the floor. Now what that does straight away is it sends a message of contraction to the muscles in the front of the throat, the cervical neck flexors, and it sends a relax message here. Too many people, when they go for good posture, try and pull their shoulders back. Now mechanically, what that does is pushes your head forward. All right, so that then just exacerbates the problem. So by doing that simple drill, you then stand up. You've actually reset your posture. So now naturally your head will sit in a neutral position. So in a matter of seconds, by teaching the right movement, it doesn't take weeks, months or years. You've actually, through a reflex, created change. I then look at just 3 very, very simple moves that you can do to activate the nerves around C5, C6 and C7 and 8. First movement, I just stand up, pop my heels back against the wall and pop my hips, my shoulders and my head back. I then just turn palms of my hand down, squeeze my shoulder blades and slowly flatten my arms up. So as I'm lifting up, what I'm actually trying to do is I'm trying to get a good squeeze between these muscles and pinching the shoulder blades. Now, just doing that movement 5 times sends a bit of a recharge message muscles here, the scapulospinal group. The next really simple movement I do is a similar part of that, is heels back against the wall, hips, shoulders, head. Squeeze my shoulder blades lift, turn the palms of my hand and cover my ears. That simple action activates the nerve at C6. So again, at all times you're squeezing your shoulder blades back and down and doing that, just doing that 5 times. The last one is you have your head, heels, hips, shoulders, head back, squeeze back between your shoulder blades and just climb a ladder, just like that. But abstract to do, but again, this is activating all these muscles here. Now, a combination of that and doing that cervical neck flexion, what that'll do, before and after, before you can have somebody with a forward head posture like this, and straight away afterwards, because we've just woken up the muscles will draw them back onto the wall, and you can hold them there. At that point, that's when you can go and do some strengthening. From an occupational health and safety point of view, it's a hazard to have your back and neck in this position, more than 30 degrees flexion for longer than 2 hours. It's an occupational hazard. So we just have to look at saying, well, okay, there's apps you can use for a screensaver to remind you to sit up straight, but then again, if the mechanics of sitting up straight are pushing your head forward, you exacerbate the problem. So just to recap those moves, heels back, hips back, shoulders and head, palms down, squeeze your shoulders, elevate your arms. Same thing to here. And the last one, same thing here. Yeah. So what that's going to do is greatly improve your kinesthetic awareness of where your shoulder blades are. So when you go to sit down, if you go to the old posture, which is this, it's like having a bit of tape across your shoulders. It just goes, oh, no, and it'll hold for about 15 minutes. If after every sort of 2.5 hours or 2 hours at your workstation, if you can just do a couple of those moves, those neck, chin tucks, and a couple of those flaps, I know they seem a bit dodgy, but if everyone's doing it, we're all on board, that dramatically changes the shape of your spine, and that gets you back to neutral. Everything's about neutral spine. You just have to look what your body's doing often, and then how can we then adjust around it. So it's sort of a quick sort of 5-minute insight into some of what we do. Down at Diego Fitness, we look at rebalancing your body and just changing how you look at that movement. It's making movement smarter is pretty much what we look at. So, thank you.
So it doesn't matter, so just a question, so it doesn't matter really, like a lot of organizations, they do spend a lot of resources on getting like economically.
Yeah, look, I spend a lot of money. I waste a lot of money in getting someone to come in and do a workstation, and they'll put a pitch in to get all these things done. And the reality is, if you get the station right but the posture wrong, you waste your time and your money. I mean, the first thing is simply get someone sitting right at a chair by increasing their structural kinesthetic awareness. If they aren't aware that this isn't straight, they're never going to sit up straight. Now, half the people I see, they're standing on an angle like that, but they'll swear they're straight. So just by doing this really gentle awakening move, you become aware of your joints.
And it's probably 60-70% of global population suffer from lower back issues. In many cases, it all stems from that neck.
And I mean, over the 25 years I've been doing it, I'd see one case out of every 50 under the age of about 45 with that forward head position. But now, just given the nature of the technology that we have that follow us home, our workstations are now following us home into our space, and therefore we're spending a greater amount of time in this position. And like I said, greater than 2 hours with 15 to 30 degrees like that is occupational loading through your spine. So if that was in an industrial space, they'd have people breaking down. So they'd solve it very, very quickly. In an office space, because people don't break down, it tends to be avoided, but then it becomes chronic. So after a period of 18 months to 2 years, then the insidious back pain, neck pain starts to roll in. Not blaming the work, it's just the awareness. So as we get stress, we change.
You just said that 1 out of 50 historically wouldn't have had this issue. What's the ratio now?
49 out of 50. Yeah. I mean, 9 out of 10 people I see will have that forward head posture.
And that's because of our devices and our computers.
And it's that postural awareness and time spent in that position.
You're driving on a desk or with devices. So So what tips would, apart from obviously having a thorough examination with you, but
Yep.
for people that are in Hamilton potentially watching,
Yeah.
apart from the exercises, is there any other way, like reminders, or would you do
Yeah,
an app?
you can really simple little health and
Put
safety
it
things.
in a
Screensaver.
reminder on your device.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. There's screensaver apps you can get that will remind you, and you can program whatever time, and it'll just tell you to sit up, to stand up. So long as you can break that cycle within that sort of, 45 to 50 minutes, well then you're okay.
Yeah,
Your body's not designed to stay static in one position
exactly.
for a long period of time. It's just quite simply just standing up, moving around, getting a drink.
And it's not only a postural sort of thing, or like to avoid pain potentially, but performance, like for people that.
Cognitively, yeah, big
Yeah.
time. Like, this is the highway for all the nerves going through your head and for oxygen going into your brain. The more time you spend like this, we're actually starving cognitive power to your brain.
Because I did, sorry to interrupt, I did have this treatment with Grant a few weeks ago, and I was buzzing for like 2 hours after. I was like getting more.
Simply we just
oxygenated blood to
increase.
brain.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. And then for the next, 24 hours, cognitively, you actually feel sharper, concentrate more, your attention to detail, and it's quite nice because you have more horsepower hitting the engine through oxygen. So.
Like a hose, with kinks, and you just like
exactly right.
straighten it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. When it comes to your individual setups here at work, do you have any sort of questions? Or, for example, should I sit straight? Should I try to do that? Or should I stand up? What's your experience?
I've recently got a stand up. This seems to be the new fad.
Yeah.
But I find you still can,
Absolutely.
in your mind, you can still lean on your desk and have that
Yeah.
posture. But all it does, it gives you a prompt to stand up and down. So
Yeah, it does.
might break that cycle a little bit.
If you're standing correctly, remember sitting or standing, the number one take home is what is your low back doing. Try and slouch with curve in your low back. You can't. Whereas if you try and achieve that posture by pulling your shoulders back, biomechanically all the muscles are going to pull you back the other way. So, all I'd suggest is while you are standing, turn your feet slightly out. That'll make the hips work a little bit more and your thighs less. And the other thing is just put a really, really subtle curve, just enough so you can just feel those ligaments grab. You're not trying to hyperextend, but just a little bit, and you'll feel a difference.
Or have like a little box as well that you can actually put one foot and they keep changing it and keep moving.
Yeah.
If you look at like cashiers in the supermarket, they don't have a healthier back than you, and they're standing 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
Because just they slouch and they're just getting into this kind of rigid movement, or rigid sort of position rather. And then they get tired and they slouch forward and they're just looking down. So making sure standing up is great, but it's movement that is not exercise, right? So you have the exercise. I have people that come to the program 5, 6, 7 times a week, which is great, but the other 8 hours a day or 9 hours they're sitting or even standing rigidly, so they don't create enough movement. So it's finding that balance. Andrew, any questions? You always have one. No?
Personally, you're nicely slouched.
Obviously,
Quite well at the moment.
when you're quite tall.
I see that.
Yeah, no, it's around as soon as you say something, it's like, good.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have more of a challenge because you're not a short guy. So obviously gravity has a little bit more of an impact. It's a good quality, I guess. Apart from
I'm not
good for
going to go, so we go with this, but yeah.
What about when he's running? Is there any tips for when you're doing exercise when you're running?
Yeah, with regards to
How you hold yourself?
relax. The more you tense, it's like anything. The relaxed sprinter works better. Your body works better when you relax more. It's the kinesthetic awareness. It's soft assembly. So if you softly hold your body as opposed to rigidly try and force it, your muscles react in a different way. The taller you are, you spend a bit more time socially sort of leaning in towards people. So that then you have to account for that by just recognising the stretches and things that you can do. Make a big difference to expand the ribcage in your breathing. And there's really simple little breathing drills that you can do that can expand the ribcage and get you used to lifting thoracically, because you'll find down at the junction of your upper back you'll be a bit more fused, just because of the leverage that's going through your spine. So there's things you can do. From a running point of view, like I say, just nice and loose and think of running high. Bit of string.
String.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Okay, so if whoever has any other questions, feel free to send them through. I find this fascinating. There's always things you can do to improve your posture or even performance. Feel free to drop by. We are around. Send us an email, and we'll see you next time for the next workshop. Thank you.